Hi,
So did you
we're going to
suck up
start
to
the
them?
informational
Did you suck up
meeting.
to them?
Yeah, I said you guys.
I want to
are nuts.
welcome everybody who's here. I'm David Gardenstein, Select Board Chair for about 10 more days. I want to introduce the people at the table. We have at the far end Assistant Town Manager Patrick Moreland. John O'Connor is Finance Director. John Allen and Kate O'Connor, Select Board members. Peter Elwell, Town Manager. David Scholes and Dick DeGray, Select Board members, and then Bob Fisher, Town Attorney. Dave also suggested that maybe we could ask all new town meeting members to stand up and say hi. Are there any new town meeting members? Thank you very much for joining us and for being willing to help out with the business of the town. This is Peter Elwell's second year as town manager, and second full year has been completed. And last year, Peter had the opportunity to present a budget to us, but he's had the chance, given this now second full year of service as town manager, really to go through and help us to evaluate the services that are being presented by the town. We've completed a comprehensive review of town operations this year, and also a long-term financial plan has been developed. And it's given us the ability to look at our town services in a long-term perspective, and it's also given us the benefit of municipal government management professionals' overview of what types of services we're offering and providing, and our staffing levels to provide those services, and also our levels of capital investment. For many, many years, with the goal of keeping costs down for taxpayers, we cut the budget every year. We cut staff, we cut capital, and I think it's fair to say that we wound up behind the curve in particularly our capital investment, so that we're a New England municipality with aging infrastructure that it was no longer serving the needs of the population as necessary. And so we did a lot of work, people know, in trying to reinvest in the police fire facilities, and that work went on about 4 years worth until it was approved at town meeting again last March, and we bid and awarded the contracts, and the construction has begun, and the new West Brattleboro Fire Station is essentially fully constructed, and we expect it to be occupied this coming Monday. From what I understand, it could slip a day or two, but I understand the fire trucks will be pulling into that fire station this coming Monday. And construction is going on at Central Station, and we've also, I think, completed, isn't that right, the tenant space at the old Reformer building, and we're beginning to do the work on the police department construction inside that facility. But over the years, we've cut public works staff, we've cut public works equipment, and delayed our investment in infrastructure. And one of the real traits of this year's budget is a renewed commitment to capital investment to make sure that we have the infrastructure, the buildings, and the equipment that we need to provide the services that our tax dollars pay for. Now, Peter's had a chance to look through all the staffing, and it seems right now that the staffing level's very lean, very lean. If we lose one employee in any given place, we may wind up behind the 8 ball and not able to provide all the services that we need. But the staffing levels seem appropriate, but the capital needs reinvestment. There are some areas where it appears, based upon what's going on, that some additional capital investment and additional staffing might be needed. For example, we have now one sidewalk plow for winter months. And when that employee started doing the plowing this morning at 1 o'clock, that sidewalk plow broke down and it had to be taken out of service to be fixed. And it's probably going to take a couple of days to get all the snow plowed off the sidewalks. So to the extent that you're seeing that the sidewalks aren't plowed, we apologize for that. Budget cuts resulted in one sidewalk plow, and that broke down, and it was a big storm. It's going to take a couple, 3 days to get all the snow off those sidewalks. Also, you're going to find in this year's budget that we're proposing reinvestment in sidewalk maintenance. And so there's some increase in the money that we're dedicating towards that. Over the course of the last years, I've been on the board 6 years, we've looked pretty much every year at what can be cut, and that's how we've started our budget discussions. But we really did start this year with an approach to the budget that we would try to level fund services that were being provided in the town. I think it probably comes from the fact that when our budget was rejected at referendum a year after the police fire had been approved, we did a lot of soul searching about potential service cuts, and we really concluded that there wasn't the stomach in the community to cut services further. And so we started looking at what would it be to level fund services and try to make capital investments. We have succeeded over the course of the last years in saving money in a range of different places in our budget. We went to every other week trash collection, which has saved quite a bit of money in our budget. We, as part of collective bargaining this year, changed the way in which employee benefits, retirement benefits are provided. And so rather than doing, I think it was a total 9% defined contribution, we now have a defined benefit plan, which we believe provides better retirement benefits for our employees and saves the town money. In addition, we decided to self-insure a substantial part of our health insurance costs so that we are depositing money into health savings accounts, and rather than the insurance companies making that money for insuring that first layer of health insurance, we're paying those benefits, and to the extent that there's excess in a certain layer of that health insurance, it comes back to the town. So we've saved money on benefits, both health insurance and retirement benefits. We upgraded all of the streetlights to LEDs and saved quite a bit of money there. And also the last 2 years, there's been significant savings in fuel expenses. I mean, fuel was $4 a gallon 2 years ago, and now it's running about $2 a gallon. Also, one other particular area of savings, the police department, how many people is it supposed to be staffed with?
27.
27 people are supposed to be regular, full-time sworn officers, but we've been down, how many?
Often as low as 22 or 23.
So we've been down to like 22 or 23 police officers. We've taken steps to try to make sure that the police officer ranks are staffed appropriately by trying to hire people and get them to the academy earlier. But in this year, last year, the year before, by budgeting for 27 sworn officers and only having 22 or 23, we've also had surpluses that have accumulated from those lower levels of staffing, although our goal absolutely is to have fully staffed police department. That resulted in about $656,000 in budget surplus this year. And it means that this year we're working with a total surplus about $2,790,000. And our goal is to have about 10% of the annual budget put away in a rainy day fund for emergencies. For example, it helped us to respond to Tropical Storm Irene's devastation because we had money in the bank and we were able to do our repairs. Surrounding towns didn't have money in the bank and weren't able to make repairs nearly as quickly. The budget that's presented to you for approval next Saturday is for a total of $17,483,841. And that's a balanced budget, revenue, and expenses. It's 7.3% increase over last year's budget, but because of the surplus funds that we have to apply, we're looking at a 2.9% tax increase, real estate tax increase, which is a 3.5 cent tax increase. It's $35 on $100,000 of assessed value. The increase in property taxes this year of about $406,000 total is almost identical to the increase in the police fire bond payments this year. So fiscal year 2018 is the single biggest repayment year for the police fire bonds. We had to borrow $12 million to do that work. And so the money we have to pay off that bond in FY18 is $405,000 more than it was in FY17. And the real estate tax increase is almost identical to that increase in the police fire bond payments that we have to make. In terms of the differences between last year's budget and this year's budget, employees are getting salary increases in the 1% to 2% range based upon collective bargaining agreements. We rewrote the police officers' pay scale to make it much more competitive in the region as a whole, and to pay officers more at the entry levels, and that was part of the collective bargaining agreement that was approved earlier this year. So wages go up this year about $179,000 plus, but benefit payments are going down $188,000 and change. So that means wages and benefits from FY17 to 18 are actually down almost $9,000. It's not a material savings, but it's essentially flat wages and benefits from 17 to 18. We have increases in general operating expenses of about $122,000 for costs relating to running the Black Mountain Road Police Station, increased investment in sidewalks and guardrails, and other miscellaneous increases, more money we have to pay rescue, the county, and Wyndham Regional Commission. And then the real change from last year's budget to this year's budget, like I said, is capital. So it's $1,006,819 increase from last year to this year in capital, and it comes in 3 different categories. We account for capital first as capital infrastructure, capital projects. Second, capital equipment, you know, the rolling stock, the trucks and the like, and then debt service. So, this coming year, we're buying a pumper, we're proposing to buy a new pumper rescue truck for the fire department. The pumper truck is no longer roadworthy. It failed inspection when it was purchased. How many years ago? Probably 15 years ago. We bought a commercial chassis with the goal of saving some money, and it didn't last as long as an industrial chassis would have. And so we're planning to buy with cash a combined pumper rescue truck for $550,000. We are making life safety improvements at the municipal center. that are necessary because there was a notice of violation for life safety violations at the municipal center about 3 years ago. So we have a 3-year plan for fixing those issues at municipal center, and that's as part of our agreement with the state. We also are making a series of energy improvements at the municipal center. That's part of our capital budget. And we're putting in the second round of and more energy efficient windows at the Gibson-Aiken Center. We're doing engineering work to look at both the Department of Public Works physical plant and the intersection at William Street and Western Avenue. There's like $250,000 in paving money, and we're repaving the parking lots. We have to buy a new street sweeper, a 1-ton dump truck. We're buying body cameras for the police, thermal imaging cameras for the firefighters, ballistic vests for the police, and more investments in sidewalks. Those are all covered within the capital budget. It's an increase of about $1 million and change over last year's capital investment, and that also reflects the increased debt payment for police fire, because don't forget, while we're making all those investments in those individual capital items, we're also spending last year into this year $12 million plus interest to rebuild the police and fire stations across town. So there's really a very, very significant reinvestment in capital infrastructure this year. It's $780,000 more for capital equipment, $105,000 more for capital projects, and about $120,000 more net in debt, because we've committed to buying recurring items as part of the annual budget rather than through borrowing. So we're having lower debt payments in many areas, but the police fire debt is up more than $400,000 this year. The total budget this year, 57% of it approximately is to pay for staff, 39.7% in wages, and 17.3% in benefits. 12.6% of that budget is department expenses, and 17.9, almost 18%, is for capital investment and debt. So those three areas, wages and benefits, department expenses, and capital investment, is 87.5% of the total budget that our tax dollars pay for. And then the rest is covered by insurance, liability, and workers' comp is about 4%. Legal, solid waste, and human services is 3.7%, and other, like rescue, Wyndham Regional Commission, our county taxes and other, is 3.5% of the total budget. And what does that buy for us? It buys police, fire, public works, parks and rec, library. Those are the substantive services. And then all the support for those: town manager's office, finance department, listers, planning and zoning, and town clerk. We also, just to put this in full perspective, have 3 other budgets, 2 of which are significant cost centers for the town. Our utilities, that being water and sewer, is a enterprise fund. It's not approved with this annual budget that you're looking at next Saturday. That's a $5.5 million item. And we will be, the next board will be approving that in May. We'll be looking at that budget as a whole. That's paid for out of your water and sewer payments. And then the parking fund is $690,000 budget. That means in total, the town is about a $24 million business. And we have about 140 full and part-time employees. Was that number about right?
About right.
All right. So to achieve all of that, next year, it's a 3.5 cent tax increase. Like I said, $35 on $100,000 of assessed value, which is a 2.9% increase, equal to the $406,000 increase in this year's police fire bond payments. It's made possible by spending $1,099,975 from the unassigned fund balance, which currently sits at $2,792,759. After spending that $1,099,000, we'll have 10% of the annual operating budget in the unassigned fund balance, which is a good target number to have as a rainy day fund for emergencies. And so that's the two pieces of the budget that are being presented to you for approval. One is to take $1,099,000 out of the unassigned fund balance and spend it towards annual expenses. And then the second is to approve the $17 million and change budget for 2018. We began the process for approving the budget with a presentation by the town manager of a budget in the beginning of November. We as Select Board had 10 meetings. In the past, we sometimes had those meetings on Saturdays when people really couldn't attend. And we've made sure to guarantee the interest of transparency that all those meetings were at regular hours, televised, live, or recorded on BCTV. Those were all at regular meeting times through November and into December. We responded to all inquiries by anybody who had any of them from the public. Finance Committee participated and reviewed this process from beginning to end and has made their recommendations. I think it's fair to say that nothing was set in stone from the beginning until we voted on this as a whole at the end. And ultimately, it became a question of what were the most appropriate purchases to make and how best in the long term to guarantee affordable tax rates while making the investments that we need. And the long-term financial plan really did help with that, because Peter was able to show us at the last budget meetings how a lower tax increase this year would have guaranteed much larger increases in the following years that would have been disproportionate. And so we think that this tax increase right now is a responsible way to fund the town's services. And this is what we're going to be presenting at town meeting next Saturday. We're ready to take any questions about anything that I said or any questions that anybody came here with, but there's 2 or 3 other issues that I'd like to raise at this point before going on. First, there's been very, very exciting progress that's been made with respect to the potential future of the municipal center. So what you'll remember is that as we were working on the police fire facilities project, questions arose about what was going to happen with the municipal center if the police department moved out and went up to Black Mountain Road. And at that time, there were 2 entities that had expressed some interest in the possibility that they might think about moving into or taking space at the municipal center. We have been actively in negotiations for a significant period of time, earnest negotiations with the state of Vermont. And we don't have final commitment at this point, and the details of the plan are not at a point where they can be shared. But I am very pleased to be able to report that the state of Vermont is interested in potentially becoming a long-term tenant in the municipal center and taking a very significant amount of space there, almost as much space or as much space as the town would need in the building as well. So if that all works out, and there's work that needs to be done in order to get there, if that all works out, we would be able to have a long-term partnership with the state of Vermont at the municipal center, hopefully with shared capital improvement costs, and we would be able to work together to have a real functioning government, state and municipal campus at the north end of town, running from the municipal center into the state office building and over into that courthouse there in the triangle. We're working with the state to plan for that at this time. Our plan at this point is that the existing tenants would remain, but they might move to other spaces in the building, that public meeting space would remain in the building, but it also might be moved to other places in the building. And if this all works out, it would involve a complete modernization and overhaul of the municipal center. There's a lot of work to be done on this, and we wanted to make sure to put this into the public arena just as soon as we were able to do so, because the discussions we've been having, the negotiations, they've been in executive session and between the town manager and personnel from the state. And we weren't prepared before, like last Thursday, to put it into the public eye. We thought about putting it into the public eye next Tuesday at select board meeting, but we have a whole bunch of town meeting members here, and we're heading towards town meeting next Saturday, so we decided not to wait. And so we're letting you know that in concept, we're hoping to move forward with this, working in partnership with the state of Vermont. It's really a very, very exciting potential step forward for the municipal center and for us working with the state on these issues. I expect there's going to be lots and lots of questions about them, about everything I just said, and whether for better or for worse, we're really not going to be able to give any more detail than what I've been able to share tonight, because there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work to be done. And we can't promise that it's going to happen. But what was the town manager's analogy? He said that when we were in the police fire stage, it was like we were having a couple of nice dates. But, you know, we're not married yet, but we're sort of engaged. So we're working towards trying to make this happen. You know, the plan won't really be ready to be presented back to the town in any more detailed form probably till the summer. And so we're going to be working intensively with that goal. You ask questions, feel free to ask questions. You're probably going to get, can't give you details. But we're committed, absolutely committed, to open and transparent government as soon as we can talk about things in public. I've been on board 6 years, and this is the way we've tried to run the government at every step of the way. And this is the first opportunity we had to be able to talk about this at this level. And we can't give you more because there's real detailed nitty-gritty work to be done. But as soon as we can give more, we'll be doing that, and we anticipate that'll be in the summer. Peter, if you want to speak to a couple of things about that.
I'd like to just add one amplification to the moment in time that we're at and why it's now the right time to come out and give this much information, even though we're so unfinished, and we'd love to be able to say more, and it will be another few months before we're in a position to really have a good, detailed, complete conversation around this as a community. So I did use the metaphor of the progression of a relationship between two people as opposed to two organizations. And the state, while we didn't actually discuss it in those metaphorical terms, the state people that we've been in negotiations with and developing this plan with agree that this is the moment when we're far enough along that it's clear that they want this to work, and we want this to work in a manner where the state would be a large-scale tenant for the long term in the municipal center, sharing some of the responsibility in ways that are not yet fully negotiated for the capital investment that's required to do the upgrade at the building. And so we'll have a lot more to say about that in the months ahead. We'll have big decisions to make together as the year goes along. But that's why we feel, in terms of those of us who've been directly involved in this, that we've progressed from discussing a concept that was very exciting and we were very hopeful about, to actually getting to the point where we say, we want to do this together, and now what we've got to do is figure out how.
Thanks, Peter. And then the other thing for right now is that at town meeting, there's 2 open articles where we need nominees for Finance Committee and Capital Grants Review Board. And so between now and next Saturday, if anybody's interested in being on Finance Committee, I think has done a really good job this year, and they've participated at a range of different steps. We want to thank them all for their work, and we hope that they all want to continue forward. But if anybody's interested in Finance Committee, or anybody knows anybody who's interested in Finance Committee or Capital Grants Review Board, please bring those names to the meeting on Saturday, March 25th at 8:30?
Yes.
8:30 in the morning. And every year at the high school, trip groups are selling coffee and stuff out front. So come ready to support the high school students too. Is there anybody on the board who wants to say anything right now?
You're doing a great job.
Well, I don't know.
Mention that you can order your lunch.
Oh, and you can pre-order your lunch too. I guess, does Hillary have those forms in the back or something?
They're in your packets.
They're in your packet, so you can pre-order lunch too if that's what you want. Does anybody have any questions about anything in the book? Anything that I said, anything about the budget, anything at all? Terry, you want to please speak to the microphone so they can hear you on TV? And they can hear you in the room, please.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Last year they did a lot of work on the rec center, and I mentioned before it has made a big difference, and I'm just curious if you have on record this winter how much you did save in relation to before.
I don't have that at hand. We will, actually we do. I see Carol standing up. She's ready to talk about it.
It's really hard to put a number on this year because we're still in the middle of the heating season. However, you'll notice on page, let me see, I better put my glasses on. On page 72, under Gibson-Aiken, you'll notice where it says fuel expense. It went this year. We have cut that budget by $4,700. That's just after 1 year. So that was after, doing all the first floor and the gymnastics room. And then this year we completed the main gym. So next year, I don't know that you'll see as much of a savings, but I suspect you'll still see some savings there.
Thanks, Carol.
Any other questions? Anybody?
Come on, don't be shy.
Chris?
Thanks. I have a question. It has to do with the town's purchase of energy. But before I do that, I wanted to say 2 things. And one is that when several years ago I was a member of the select board, it astonished me as someone new to the business of municipal government how dedicated the town staff is. It was a revelation to me that this group of civil servants really is so professional and dedicated. They're doing a tough job where their resources have to be used hyper efficiently, really. I just want to put a plug in for that group of people who are on whom we are spending most of our tax dollars. My opinion is that it's well worth it, that we're actually getting kind of a bargain. I wish I could pay more myself, I would, because the absolute professionalism that the board experienced in dealing with all the departments was something that really truly gave me, for one, real faith in this form of self-government and specifically in the town of Brattleboro. I'm here to say thank you to all those folks. So I have a question about the town's energy future, it seems to me that solar power being the Vermont's, what I've been told is Vermont's fastest growing industry, and one that can provide much more stable, provide for much more stable planning for the, the expense of power. Can you just review where the town stands on such things? Because, and I'll tell you, personally why I'm so concerned about this question. I just put in a solar array myself last fall, and it was at some significant expense, but over the next 25 years, I'll probably cut my expense for that energy directly or indirectly by way more than 50%. And I know that the town has been long interested in getting involved with a solar farm here, but I've lost the connection to it. Can you tell us where we are in that kind of alternative but more stable source of energy? Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Chris.
Oh, and I'm sorry, one more thing I wanted to say. It's an editorial comment, which is to thank you to the board. It's a tough job, and I think that this select board has conducted itself very professionally, and I'm proud to be a resident of the same town as this group. So thanks.
Thank you, Chris. We had a very bad experience with our last solar power vendor. Ooh-wee.
We were not engaged.
Well, we were engaged for a little while, but we got divorced. And we wound up, we sued them, right?
Yes.
Or they sued us. I mean, we were in court, we sued them. And it didn't go well. And while that relationship was breaking up and we were trying to determine who owed money to who, we had the opportunity to cast our solar power lot in with the development that's going to be happening up at the old landfill on Old Ferry Road. And so we signed on to purchase solar credits through that, or to purchase our solar with the use of the credits at the Windham Solid Waste Management District facility. When that is constructed and we're taking the credits, my understanding is that we anticipate energy cost savings in the range of $80,000 a year, and approximately 80% or more of our electric energy consumption will be through that solar credit program. So it sounds like we're making maximum use of the solar credits and could be saving about $80,000 a year through that process. Like I said, we're also investing in energy efficiency measures, or proposing to invest in energy efficiency measures through this budget at the municipal center. There was one proposal that didn't get adopted as part of this year's budget, to have a shared pellet boiler to do the heating for both the library and the municipal center. And I think based at the very least on the questionable future when we were doing the budget planning of what was going to happen at the municipal center, we weren't prepared to include that. But I expect that going forward there'll at least be consideration of whether to do the pellet boiler for the shared heating needs at the municipal center and the library going forward. But that's not in the budget right now.
Two quick additional points regarding the solar array that the town has invested in. So the town of Brattleboro is actually the largest single investor. There's quite a number of investors in it, and there's 2 or 3 other large ones, but our share will be the greatest share for what's going to go on up at the solid waste district. And the reason why, as Mr. Gartenstein described, we're at slightly in excess of 80% of our power consumption is committed to our share in this investment. The reason why you don't invest 100% is because we are still working on identifying ways to save energy, additional ways in which the town can be smarter about how we use energy. If we invested to a greater degree and then achieved great reduction in our consumption, we actually would be leaving savings on the table. It would cost the taxpayers money. We wouldn't receive all the credits that we might otherwise be entitled to. So it was a careful calibration to be investing sort of as much as we thought we prudently could, but holding back from that 100% commitment so that there's some room still for us to achieve additional efficiencies in town operations.
And as a result of the litigation, the money that was held in escrow came back to the town.
Right.
So the dispute with the prior solar energy vendor actually resulted in the escrowed money that was in dispute coming back into our bank account.
A couple things about the Waste District array. To date, it's the largest array that's been planned and will be constructed in the state. And the rate that we got, and that all the other municipalities that signed on to as off-takers of the power, is also the best rate to date that anyone's been offered. Another thing that's happened is that we have completed audits, energy audits of all the town buildings, and now we just need to make the investments going forward to realize the savings from the energy upgrades. And hopefully we'll be able to move a little more aggressively on those in the near future.
Spoon. Mr. Agave.
Spoon Agave, District 3. Concerning the reserve funds, what I need to make the decision about how to decide whether to keep the reserve funds in the reserve or to return them to taxpayers is to know whether we actually earn more money for the taxpayer when we purchase things in cash, which we can do with excess reserve funds, and not pay interest, as opposed to returning the reserve funds to the taxpayer. It'll be a couple of cents, so each taxpayer gets $60, $70 or whatever it is, and that's not money that they'll earn much interest on. So to the average taxpayer, it's just a little extra cash in their pocket by not paying the taxes. But there's a lot of stuff on the capital plan that you're going to want to bond for. Not too much next year. I saw there's a dump truck. I don't know what the plan for that was. But I see the following year it's a $3 million capital expense in a single year. So the only way I can make the decision in sum is to know whether it's possible to save more money by not spending the reserve, by not returning the reserve fund to the taxpayers, and saving the money on interest by paying in cash for capital expenses.
The direct answer to your question is that there's no way to foresee exactly how that math would turn out. We'll know when we've lived through another year and see what happens with inflation, and then a longer period of time over the course of what would have been the debt payments on those purchases, and see what happens with inflation during that time to know which way that might have turned out to be more advantageous for an individual taxpayer. What we can say is when there are surpluses that are larger than normal, larger than usually anticipated, like this past year, where we made some changes that saved money in the middle of the year, and so that we achieved those savings against the budget because we had anticipated having higher expenses for certain of our costs, and Mr. Gartenstein reviewed some of that. So we had that, and then we had the savings that accrued because of the police officer vacancies, and we had some substantial sources of revenue that came in higher than had been forecast, and the combination of all that led to the year-over-year change in the unassigned fund balance being an increase of over $600,000. There's a principle that's important, and it goes to what Mr. Agavi was speaking to, even though not exactly the way the question was asked, that if we simply reduce taxes, operating expenses of the town, when we have some surplus cash like that, there's then costs that we're going to have to all bear together the following year in order to catch up to the savings we enjoyed that first time. So you take the expenses of our just providing the services of town government and undertax ourselves in a year when we had a good surplus the year before, we'll just have to reverse that cycle and have a larger than otherwise reasonably expected tax increase in the following year, or else have to cut services because we won't be living within our means in the year that we experience the surplus. So instead, there's a good principle that we're trying to adhere to that's part of this longer-term approach that we're taking to how we forecast and how we manage the town's finances, that says that's an opportunity. Each time that we have a good year like that with a little larger than expected surplus, that's an opportunity to invest more in the capital needs of the town because our capital needs are great. And if we're investing in one-time expenses, like the purchase of a fire truck with cash instead of borrowing and having to pay interest on that over the years ahead, that does two things that are good and prudent in terms of managing the finances of the town. One is that it does reduce the overall cost of those purchases. It takes advantage of the fact that we have a little more cash now than we might normally have on hand to make such a major purchase with, so we save the interest charges. But the other thing is that it keeps relatively more smooth the tax impact from going year to year to year and providing all the services that we provide. So it takes some pressure off of those cycles that we would otherwise be going through, forcing ourselves to make hard decisions about whether to pay the running cost of town government or whether to make cuts in services. And we were there, you were there the year before I arrived in the discussions that you had around the budget that was rejected back in 2014. And we want to make sure that if we ever end up in that kind of situation again, it's because we're all coping together with an unforeseen situation. We want to not make decisions in one year that put us into that position the next year.
Anybody else? Yes.
Mary Casey from District 1. We talked a little bit last year about the proportion of tax-exempt parcels in town versus taxed parcels. I was wondering how that proportion was doing. And secondly, we talked a little bit about the idea of maybe some sort of payment in lieu of taxes for some of those larger nonprofits might be appropriate and where that might be.
So there is still substantial work to be done on the second piece of that, and that's something actually that's one of our stated goals for this coming year, is to really get at that as opposed to thinking about it, start doing some real active work on what would be fair modification of the current pilots, what's legal and proper. There's actually some litigation in one case regarding one of the major landowners in town that we need to adhere to in terms of the court-imposed solution that limits the flexibility there. But there are opportunities to pursue more revenue for the operations of the town from some of those larger landowners, and we intend to have those conversations. It's also going to be part of broader statewide work that we intend to do with other regional hub communities that we've been talking about doing, and just with the variety of other things we haven't gotten to actually be actively engaged with yet. But we're really looking forward to this being the year when we get started talking to and collaborating with the other communities that are the center of their regions of the state, and have these situations where social services are often provided in those towns that serve a much broader population in the surrounding area. Those are often situations where they're not paying into the tax system, but there are other things that happen, other burdens that are created for the community that result from those services. It also improves the quality of life for the community but also for the broader region. So there's a fairness issue there that we want to address. We're hoping to address it statewide with those other larger municipalities, with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and hopefully a year from now we'll have something more tangible to say about it. In the meantime, there's not a material change. Russell Rice is in the room and might be able to be more precise about it, but I can tell you there's no material change from last year to this year in that 18 to 20% of the value that's tax exempt.
Yes, sir.
George Carville, District 1. Are we done with the previous? I didn't want to.
Yes.
Last year, there was an extended discussion under Article 12 about essentially increasing the amount of money we pay the Board of Selectmen in order to perhaps attract people of lower income to serve. It was resolved with a promise from the Finance Committee to look into it and get back to us. I haven't found that in here. Is that going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Franz? Sure.
$100,000.
Franz Reichsman, District 2, Chair of the Finance Committee. The answer is yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit, please?
I'll add a little detail. That's the one part of our work that we haven't completed our report on, and that will be done within the next 10 days. I'll give you a little sneak preview. We did a lot of research throughout the state of Vermont and around New England as to what is known about how much should board members be paid in a setting like Brattleboro. And the answer is there's absolutely no consensus, there is no research, there is nothing that we could find that would tell us what the right answer is. In addition to that, we circulated among town meeting representatives and current and past board members just an opinion survey of what do you think about this. I don't have the results of those data here, and I don't see the people who actually conducted that survey on the committee. I don't see them here either, so I can't interrogate them. But we will have all that for you at town meeting. You didn't miss it.
Dick.
Last time I was on the board, I believe in 2012 was the last time the board received a stipend increase. Before that, I think it went back into the early 90s. One of the things that I think is one of the biggest waste of time at town meeting is the discussion of what we pay our officials. $1 is too much, and $10,000 is not enough, to be honest with you. I've been involved with town meeting for about 28, 29 years. And anybody who's ever served here or on the school board or the BUHS board that I know of has never run because of the salary. And yet every year we have this discussion that takes up time, and people are well-intended. I personally would like to see this as an article question every 5 years or every 10 years, where then you can say, okay, because I always felt that select board members back in the early 90s were getting $2,000, which actually back then seemed like a lot of money. And then in 2012, when there was an increase voted to the board members, I certainly felt that it was more than ample. You can have all these peripheral discussions about having access to run for the board and being able to pay for childcare and other issues that you might have. Those are all things that you need to consider when you're thinking about running for the board, because that stipend, you're doing it not for the stipend to pay for childcare. It's just like our congressmen, they know what the salary is, and yet they're looking for a raise. You know what the salary is going in, and if you can't afford to do the job, you shouldn't run for it and say, I need more money because this is costing me more than I thought it would. So I truly believe that we do waste a lot of good energy discussing what you should be paying town school board or the select board, and you should look at it in terms of saying, okay, whatever that number is, it has been 10 years, we should give them a stipend increase rather than, you know, I was in Vero Beach last year at your town meeting, and I was watching, and when somebody said they were going to give $25,000, I was screaming. And people, what's going on? I said, hey, I think I just got a $25,000 raise. So for my one-year seat, I don't want anybody to ever sit here because it is an attractive salary. And to my knowledge, no one has ever run or is sitting here because of the salary. It's certainly something nice to get, but if they did it, every one of these people would serve for $1. And I say that from the heart. So Saturday, when this article question comes up, I just hope that you read the line item, what the salaries are, and you just say, that's good, let's move on to the next article question.
Are there any other questions about Mr. Crisp? Lauren got up before.
He's quick. Just a quick announcement. It's very heartening tonight to see all of the new and young members of town meeting. And I would like to point out that Marshall Wheelock, the tallest guy here in the room, will be giving a very brief intro to town meeting history and procedure for anyone who cares to come half an hour early, 8 o'clock on Saturday morning just before town meeting. Marshall's been doing this for many years, and it's a really worthwhile thing if you've got time.
It's a riveting class.
Yes.
Did you have a comment or a question?
It is. No, not really. God, he is tall.
Marshall Wheelock, District 2. This is perhaps looking forward a bit more than usual, but in our upcoming budget we have $35,000 scheduled for a study of the William Street Junction, and then the following year $350,000 to do something about it. And could somebody just mention what they're looking to accomplish there? I say that as someone who had a close call there this afternoon.
Yep. It's part of a multi-year program where we have prioritized the first 5, and they're listed in that plan. And then there's other places in town that still need to be addressed after that. What we want to do is the planning number in each of those fiscal years and the identification of the location that needs our attention for these more dangerous intersections. Those are fixed, if you will. You know, that not that from year to year we can't change up the priorities. We certainly can if there's a need to do that. But the intent is to make sure that each one of those years we actually do the engineering analysis and the planning for how we can improve safety at those locations. The year after that, we have a substantially larger amount of money each time forecast for what it would take to implement improvements. Those are placeholder numbers. That's a best guess at the magnitude of what it might cost to actually do what needs to be done, because the real funding of the engineering analysis is what's going to help us determine what are the appropriate actions that need to be taken and get a good cost estimate on those actions. We won't always be able to afford, going from year to year, we won't always be able to afford to do the improvement right away, depending on a variety of factors, the other capital needs and what's happening with our revenues. But by doing the planning for these intersection improvements in a very systematic way, we end up with projects that are ready to be funded for grant assistance. So instead of it being an idea, it's actually a project. It's got some scope to it. We can demonstrate what the safety improvements would be by actually doing the work and make ourselves more eligible to receive help from the state government to implement those projects. So that's why you see it laid out intersection by intersection and the 2-year funding each time.
So to be very specific and to respond to your specific question about what do we hope to do, we've had meetings at traffic safety, which clearly recognize that it's a dangerous intersection, having vehicles backing out into the street from that business creates a dangerous situation for other vehicles, for bicyclists, and for pedestrians. There's no safe way to walk there. And there has been some, at least preliminary thought given to closing one of the 2 legs of William Street coming up, and to squaring up a turn, and to making a wider turn at that location. But those are just ideas that would have to be fleshed out. The real way in which this is manifested is that we spent a lot of time studying the Union Hill intersection, and then we came up with a good plan there, and that was grant funded. And I mean, there was a tragedy there. There was a hit and run and somebody was killed 4 years ago. But we now have an intersection there that's been squared up to the street, where very significant bulb outs have been constructed so that the area that needs to be crossed is way, way smaller. And coming up Union Hill, you're now on the flat to look east and west on Western Avenue. So we're hoping to make those sorts of improvements. There's a series of intersections that are not right angles in town, and we're hoping to address those one at a time. Any other questions right now? Franz?
Franz Reichsman, District 2 again. I don't really want to talk to you guys up there. I want to talk to everybody else.
Okay.
So this is a pitch on behalf of the Finance Committee, which I've chaired for the past 2 years. And I especially want to address some of the new members and tell you why this is an excellent opportunity to join us. There's a couple of reasons that it's really meaningful to me. One is that I think the Finance Committee, along with other town boards, and this is certainly not exclusive, but is part of the glue that holds the town together. And in the current overall political climate, when so much seems very uncertain, I've come to appreciate that it's the kind of efforts that we make here in person with each other that will really hold our political system intact going forward into the future. I think it's very important. I mean, preaching to the converted a little bit here, but the more we can do to be in touch with each other and be in touch with people whose views may not be exactly the same as ours, I think it's an important aspect of life in the current times. The second reason is that this has been a real education for me. After doing this for a couple of years, I really, for the first time, feel like I understand how the decisions get made in town, and they've revolved around the police department, the fire department, all the town departments. Our committee has been able to meet with Peter Elwell and John O'Connor and David Scholes and hear about many aspects of town finances and school board finances, and it's actually starting to make some sense to me. If you are interested in town affairs, which presumably you are, this is a great opportunity to really get involved, really understand how the decisions get made, and to come into closer contact with the people who have the responsibility to make those decisions. So I'm going to hang around the back of the room after this meeting is over, and if any of you are interested in the Finance Committee, please come and talk to me, and we'll just have a little discussion of what might be involved and what you might want to do. So, thank you.
While people are thinking about whether they have any other questions, I'm going to walk through some of the other articles quickly so that people have some perspective. And what time is it?
A little after 8.
So I won't talk more than 5 more minutes. If you look at Article 16 on page 7 of your blue book, we have a downtown improvement district, and we raise taxes on the property owners in the downtown improvement district to fund activities of that district through, what's the name of the organization now? Not Building a Better Brattleboro, what's it called?
Downtown Brattleboro
The
Alliance.
Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. And so that $75,000 item is to approve the funding for the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance raised through taxes, a surcharge on the taxes for those downtown properties. Article 17, we sponsored years ago water and sewer improvements at the Mountain Home Park, and annually we have to approve this $223,000 assessment to pay off those water and sewer improvements for the trailer park. Article 18 is the human services funding, and rather than having individual human services organizations come to select board and make presentations, we have a human services funding committee which takes all of the applications for funding, vets them all, reviews the finances of those organizations and the services they provide, and then makes a comprehensive recommendation to town meeting, which gets voted up or down without being amended for human services funding that the town provides as a whole. It comes to about $120,000 annually, and these are for services that are provided to Brattleboro residents. Vermont state law allows taxpayer funding for human services organizations for the town. We've talked about 19 and 20, Articles 19 and 20. The Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Services has requested some support from the town, and after hearing their presentation, we recommended as a board $24,000 to be awarded from program income, which is a revolving loan fund that disperses money that comes from community economic block grant, community development block grants. And so there'll be a vote on that issue. And then there's the Article 22 on Indigenous Peoples Day that was put on the warning by petition. So those are the primary articles besides the quick procedural ones at the beginning. We go second this year as a town. The first articles are the school district, and their informational meeting is next Wednesday. Are there any more questions about anything for our town meeting Saturday, March 25th? Yep. Rich?
I'm the guy behind Article 22, Indigenous Peoples Day, on this round at least. And I just want to be here to offer some information about that and take questions if there are any. Why Indigenous Peoples Day? Because its time has come. It's a good year, Standing Rock in the headlines, and with the move nationwide toward embracing those who have not been embraced in the past. So there's that, philosophically. It's a nationwide movement. This is not a shot in the dark. This is going across the country. There are 2 to 3 dozen cities that have adopted this already. Phoenix, Albuquerque, Portland, Berkeley, close to home, Amherst, Northampton, Cambridge. Last week, Marlboro, town of Marlboro adopted this townwide. They're the first in the state. I was hoping Brattleboro would be the first, but we can be second. Why Brattleboro? I think Brattleboro can provide a great deal of leadership on this because this is where colonization began in the state. Fort Dummer, 1724. This is where the process of displacing the indigenous people of this area, which are the Abenaki and their ancestors. This is where it began and where it continues. And it's highly symbolic, but I think it's an important thing to do. That's my little piece. I brought this to the select board. They asked me to go through the petition route. That's why you're seeing it on Article 22 tonight, and you'll be seeing it next Saturday. And in the meantime, I had gone to the governor. There may be a little confusion around that. And he issued an executive proclamation last October, which was for 1 year only. So it hasn't really taken effect. I'd like to start here at home. I believe charity begins at home. And on the statewide level, there is a bill going through the Senate right now, Senate Bill 83. It's in Government Ops Committee. Have hopes it's going to kick out before Friday, crossover deadline, and go on to the floor. There is an identical bill in the House, House Bill 488, which is not seeing any action in this first year of the biennium, but I'm hoping the Senate will bring it out to the statewide legislature. In the meantime, Brattleboro can do it here. So thank you. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be around.
Thank you, Rich. Spoon?
Is there anyone here from CEVEDS that could answer a question on their article?
Next Saturday.
Next Saturday. Well, maybe they're requesting that we contribute $24,000 to their program, and then they list a number of things which don't necessarily add up to much in return for that. But they do a lot of work anyway. I wish I was more, and I'd like to become, if we're going to fund them, or add this little piece, it's not much of their funding, but $24,000 doesn't sound like a lot until someone says, let's add $24,000 to the human services budget. And where are we going to get that from? It would be, I would like CEVEDS to provide something in return for that money, something a little bit more concrete. And what I will suggest is a report every year to be included in our town report. That would be an economic report of the area. Unemployment statistics, household income statistics, and all of that. So that all of us, as we look at our own money and how we spend money, and we talk about all kinds of things, whether we can afford things or not, and really the critical information for understanding how we are doing are in those sorts of statistics that do have to do with unemployment and household income, et cetera.
Yes. I'd just like to clarify in response to Mr. Agave's inquiry that CEVEDS actually came in asking for more money than that, and for the second year, the select board concluded that what they were asking for was more than the town should be contributing, and so we put it in for $24,000. In fact, in prior years, we had declined to put the request in unless it had been matched by surrounding communities. So they may be here on Saturday to speak to the article, but it goes to a question that was asked about before in terms of the concentration of tax-exempt properties here in town and the role of the town as a regional economic hub and the impact that we experience in way higher taxes to support the regional economy. It's a very complicated matter that I'm not going to speak to thoroughly right now, but hopefully they'll be there Saturday to speak to it. Anyone else? I want to thank everybody for coming out. If any questions arise between now and Saturday, we have a select board meeting Tuesday.
and anybody's free to come talk with us. And we're always available to take questions, both select board members and members of the staff. Thanks for coming and thanks for participating.